But you got to get CNN to talk about these issues. You got to get your members of Congress to talk about these issues.
We're literally talking about it right now.
Yeah, but I'm forcing you to talk about it, Anderson.
Well, okay. Thanks for having him on now when, he's not running for president, he's 95 years old, and he's not a threat to your parent company.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio, Tumwa, Iowa. Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up.
Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. Delighted to be joined by my new partner in crime, Ashley Bishop. She is about a week in, new reporter on Status Coup. And you and I were texting last night as one Bernard Sanders, in my view, bitch slapped Anderson Cooper, a new one. Snowflake alert, Colin, if you could put the graphic there, because some people, oh, Jordan, Bernie's a sellout, this and that. Well, too bad. We're going to cover this whether you like it or not. I got my qualms with Bernie. I know Ashley does too. But hey, he finally gave CNN some medicine. I wish he would have done this during his 2 campaigns. But CNN had him for an hour town hall. Isn't that interesting, Ashley? They suddenly want to have him when he's no threat and isn't running for president.
Of course.
Yes. But they had him. It was a couple key parts. We were texting about it during it. But I want to show this part because this was the most aggressive I've ever seen Bernie Sanders against corporate media. And it was just a beautiful thing to see. Let's show you.
Is widespread agreement. And the failure of the Democratic Party, in my view, has been they have not been aggressive in standing up to powerful corporate interests in laying out an agenda and implementing an agenda that speaks to the needs of the working class. All right, I'm going to ask you guys a question. He's asking me questions all night. I'm going to ask you a question. All right. Raise your hand if you think that the American healthcare system is working. Raise your hand if you think the American healthcare system is not working. All right, let me rephrase the question. Raise your hand if you think the American healthcare system is working well. Anderson, how many people are raising their hands?
None.
Raise your hand if you think the American healthcare system is broken. Raise your hand.
Majority, everyone.
Not a majority, virtually everybody in the room. And that is.
Ashley, am I too cynical? But you notice how the camera is able to pan to show the audience when it's something they want to show? Why didn't they pan and show that nobody raised their hand that the healthcare system is working?
I know that is very suspicious. And I think it's really funny how Bernie was kind of giving Anderson the bitch task of, answering how many people actually had their hands up at any given moment. And he does try to be a majority of people. No, it was everybody in the room.
Yes. I my spidey sense went up that CNN can't show the audience nobody raising their hand. But anyway, let's continue.
Behind that guy.
And that is, all right, question again. How many nations, wealthy nations in the world, do not guarantee health care to all people as a human right? Anybody know the answer? Which country? All right. Now, you're not going to hear much about that on corporate television. You're not going to hear much about that in the United States Congress. And yet we have one of the worst outcomes, healthcare outcomes, of any country on earth. And it gets back to money in politics and the domination of big money, in this case, insurance companies, drug companies, over the Republican and Democratic.
I want to try to get some more of our audience questions. Joel,
no, I know you do, but I want to talk about.
I know.
No, I want to, sometimes these issues about health care, about income and wealth inequality are not talked about in the corporate media, and it's time that we did talk about them. That's why the question a moment ago, why are people losing faith in the American system? We don't talk about it on CNN. We don't talk about it in Congress. It's because they understand that a handful of billionaires exert enormous influence. And that has got to change. So when I'm running around the country with Alexandria and other people, what we are trying to do is demand that working class people begin to stand up and fight for their rights. There is no reason we should be the only major country not to have health care, not to have paid family and medical leave, et cetera, et cetera. Why we have the highest rate of childhood poverty, almost any major country. 22% of our seniors living on $15,000 a year. Anybody here think that makes sense?
A lot of things to address here. And this is not me being a Bernie bro. This is just straight political analysis. Boy, it would have been nice if he did that in 2016 and 2020, because CNN was not, in my view, was not fair to him. MSNBC, certainly not. He went on because he has to reach, their core demographic, which is the older viewers. And I think Bernie had a bit of an outdated mentality because he's older, that it was still very important to be, mainstream media. That's where you want to reach. But I mean, he's just pointing at Anderson, corporate media, like pointing at Anderson and just cutting him off and saying, you're not going to hear it on CNN. And we didn't show you, we're not showing you this part because I can't find it, but there's a part where Anderson kind of like very feebly responds like, well, I have you on now.
But you got to get CNN to talk about these issues. You got to get your members of Congress to talk about these issues.
We're literally talking about it right now.
Yeah, but I'm forcing you to talk about it, Anderson.
This is Joel. We invited you. This is Joel Pritikin. He's a student in.
Well, okay. Thanks for having him on now when, he's not running for president. He's 95 years old and he's not a threat to your parent company. But I thought it was very refreshing, and the audience seemed to kind of have the same sentiment as him.
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. I agree. Like you said, I wish that we had seen this, like almost 10 years ago now. As we were texting last night, like I think we'd be on a potentially different timeline if we had seen this Bernie in 2016 or 2020. And again, like, calling out corporate media for not covering these things that people actually care about is not new. Like, these things are not new. CNN was not covering any, material concerns for the working class in 2016, in 2020. That's why they lost. So, him calling them out now is great, but it would have been nice to see when it mattered a little bit more.
Yes, I think that is, and you and I talked about this offline, that's why I've always said to the Bernie's a fraud people and he's a sellout. Listen, you're entitled to your view, but I can't throw the baby out with the bathwater because most of the people watching this right now, I would say a good percentage of them entered politics because of this man. Does he have the spine that I wish he did? No, I don't think he does. Is he a true revolutionary figure in terms of political revolution? No, because revolutionaries don't call their political opponents my friend Joe, right? He wouldn't go after Joe. He wouldn't go for the jugular. He wouldn't go for the jugular for Hillary Clinton. He made a lot of mistakes, and what's the point now of relitigating those mistakes? But do I think his heart's in the right place? Yes. Do I think he's been incredibly consistent? Yes. Do I think at 83 years old, the fact that he's still barnstorming the country for these things matters? Yes. Do I wish he was holding these rallies and giving people an action plan to run as independents? Yeah, I wish. Do I wish he was holding these rallies and giving people an action plan, start organizing in your local communities, economic actions? Yes, because in reality, I mean, he's kind of, people like the word sheep herding. I mean, holding these rallies, he's technically sheep herding people back into the Democratic Party. Am I going to cancel him because of that? No, I don't agree with the strategy, but I'm glad he is out there because the progressive movement doesn't really have a leader, in my view. For better or worse, he's exciting people. And I could tell you, Ashley, and you covered the recent Trump rallies. When I was covering the Tesla protests, there was a lot of normie Dems out there, kind of Hillary voter types, Biden voter types, that were singing Bernie Sanders praises when they were probably talking crap on Bernie Sanders 5 years ago. There was a lot of them who were crapping on Chuck Schumer. These are like vote blue no matter who type of people. You can't tell me that Bernie Sanders doesn't have something to do with that. So, I respect people who just say he's a sellout, he's a fraud. I don't agree with you, but I think it matters that he's on CNN right now, basically exposing them for the frauds they are, basically exposing them for essentially propping up that status quo healthcare system and others. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to also give him credit, he's 83. that is an 83-year-old man, and there has been, so much attention on the gerontocracy and all that kind of stuff as of late. He is still kicking. He's going strong. So I think, he deserves some credit for that. Not to mention that he's kind of been shouldering the burden of electoralism, or progressivism, left politics in the electoral system by himself. There's nobody else. I don't think that people might disagree with me. I don't think that AOC is an adequate successor to him. So there really isn't anybody else, representing us in that way. So I don't think it's totally fair to say that he's a sellout and whatever else.
No, I just
think he
think
deserves
that's
credit for that.
Yeah, I think. Listen, I understand people's anger. I understand people. I felt in 2020, he said, "Hold your nose, vote for Biden, and we'll fight him on day one. We'll move him left." Well, that day never came. So there is legitimate criticisms of Bernie. I think Biden also did more than we thought he was going to do, at least in the beginning, on the COVID relief bill, in large part because of Bernie's influence, because Bernie was, at the table with Biden. I think Biden was listening to him. But you have Bernie going out there barnstorming against Trump. I wish Bernie, when Biden was allowing Manchin and Sinema to make him look like a little bitch, I wish Bernie, when Biden wouldn't fight to extend the child tax credit beyond a year, when Biden unilaterally moonwalked away from a $15 minimum wage, Bernie should have been doing rallies against Biden. That's my opinion. He didn't do it. So you want to call him a sellout? Call him whatever you want. But I'm not going to erase 40 years of this man's record. And this guy was fighting in the wilderness when there was no term Medicare for all. Single payer, the media was successfully making that sound radically. So to me, two things could be true at the same time. You could have some nuance. I want to play another clip. It wasn't necessarily Bernie bitch slapping Anderson, although that was very, very enjoyable. But I think this is what's going on. I think this is really what Doge is all about. I think this is just a test run to the eventual main course, which is an AI economy, a jobless economy. I didn't love Andrew Yang as a political candidate, but I agreed with the core of what he was saying, which is we're going to have a jobless economy. We're going to have tech corporations are going to weaponize tech to get rid of workers. Let's show this part. Colin, edit out this part because I'm going to have to find the beginning of the clip here. Hold on.
They could do to federal employees. But I want you to think about this.
Here we go.
If federal employees, most people are not federal employees. And I think many people are saying, wow, that's outrageous. I really feel for these federal employees thrown out on the street. But I want you to think about this. If Musk can do this to federal employees, some of whom are in unions, some of whom work for years, what do you think he's going to be doing when artificial intelligence and robotics comes for your job? Guess what? The job you have today ain't going to be here in 10 or 15 years. And you think Musk and his friends are saying, oh, my goodness, how do we protect American workers from the explosion in technology that we're seeing? They don't give a damn about you. If this is what they could do to federal employees, think about what they could do to people in the private sector. So bottom line there is I am not a Luddite. I think technology has many positive things to say. But we have got to understand that new technology, AI, robotics, has got to work for working people, not just for the billionaires and Mr. Musk.
I want you to meet.
You just did a report on an AI company posting billboards in San Francisco and elsewhere, stop hiring humans. So you're seeing this up close.
Yeah, absolutely. He's commenting on exactly that. I mean, I think that the point about that he opened with saying, if they can do this to federal workers who are largely unionized, what do you think is going to happen to you if you work in the private sector? I think that's a really important point. And I think that that's something that people haven't really connected back to the federal layoffs, that it's not just about federal workers being laid off in a silo. It's what it represents for the whole of the labor movement. And I've spoken with Les Leopold, who does a lot. He talks about this a lot. His last book was basically about like mass layoffs in the private sector. And that's a lot of what he and I have spoken about, just that you can't look at this by itself. You can't look at it by itself, because whatever happens to these workers is going to happen to you. And Bernie just kind of echoed those sentiments there too. If they can roll back or just, kind of disregard labor law when it comes to these workers, they're going to do the same to us. And then when we lose our jobs, they are going to replace us with AI, whatever, and bots. And yeah, I just think it's, this is a canary in the coal mine situation.
And honestly, like, the pioneers of this stuff have pretty openly said it. I mean, Sam Altman a couple months ago kind of said, yeah, as we develop AI, we're going to need to create a new social contract because we will replace some workers with AI. Well, new social contract kind of sounds twisted to me. You have in your last report, everybody check it out. We posted it yesterday. You have Shopify, which is a big company. They're directing their employees, hey, if for any function that AI could do it, we expect you to use AI rather than hiring an employee. You don't think GM is going to do that? You don't think Ford, Walmart? I mean, you're already seeing a Republican propose legislation a few weeks ago to basically allow AI to prescribe medicine over doctors. Well, how did that work out for United Healthcare? Its murdered CEO, Brian Thompson, he was instrumental in United Healthcare accelerating use of AI at a 90% error rate. Let me repeat, a 90% error rate. So I think Bernie's spot on. And like healthcare not being a big topic on CNN, I don't hear a lot about AI replacing jobs. Maybe they'll cover it when AI replaces Anderson Cooper. I don't know. So listen, it was an hour town hall, and it kind of shows you, you got to look at corporate media. There's a reason they're doing it now. There's a reason. I mean, I did a video a week or two ago, Ashley. They're suddenly airing Bernie Sanders fight oligarchy rallies live for 10 minutes at a time. Well, they weren't airing his Washington Square Park rally live, the one I covered in 2016 when he had 40,000 people inside and outside the park. At that time, as that rally was going on in New York City, they were showing Donald Trump's empty podium. So this is the definition of corporate Johnny-come-latelys. And there's a reason they didn't want to elevate this man when when he posed somewhat of a threat. So we're going to continue covering Bernie as he does whatever he's doing, the Fight Oligarchy Tour. Tina Desiree Berg is actually going to be live for us Saturday, so put it in your calendar. I think the rally starts at 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock Pacific, so 4 o'clock Eastern. Bernie and AOC are going to be in LA for their latest Fight Oligarchy tour, so we'll air that live. But very interesting times. We'll stay on it. Thank you.
Bye.